Senior Festival of the Arts. My name is Nancy Lemmerhart, and on behalf of the Senior Festival of Arts, the Senior Festival of Arts, I do greet you today. Thank you so much for coming, participating, and the talent that we have here today is absolutely incredible, and I'm sure that you would agree with that. I do want to tell you that we have a total of 227 art pieces. We have 118 artists participating. The ages of the seniors go from 55 years of age to 85. The art pieces are ranging in price, and we do have to sell the artist's paintings if they so choose. The art pieces are going in price from $25 up to $1,300. Last year, we sold a total of 9 pieces for the artist, and the selling price last year went from $195 up to a wood carving that fetched $800. So there you go. It's a wonderful thing that the artist can be appreciated and also I know have those few shekels, and it takes so many hours to do all the fine work that they do. I am really totally blessed to be surrounded by so many people. And if you take a look, and I want you to just take a look at the back of the program, and these are the people that give the helping hand. Is it okay? Is it better? Can you still hear me? I can't. These are the people that help us. And I really want to tell you that the Senior Festival of Arts is a team effort. And it's incredible people that come around to give that helping hand. And take a look at that program, because they are all very fine people, personalities, and I thank them. Thank you very much. The judges are very interesting. If you will take a look at the judges, I think we have some very impressive judges. And I do thank them for also participating. I also want to mention to you something. If you look at the art pieces, but you have to look beyond the art pieces because they are hanging on some new art boards. And I would want you to go back and take a look at them. For all of the years, 13 years that I have been doing this art show, we have always relied on the art boards from the Berks County Park and Recreation. And it was kind of about time that we kind of had our own, but we had no channels to do it. But I have a very special friend who is patron of the art, Patricia Perfect, who financed this for us, and with the wonderful help of 2 great laborers who spent many hours constructing them, Larry Concordia and Paul McCann. Thank you. Thank you very much. Paul McCann is here. Where is he? Stand up, Paul. I don't see you. One side. There you are. Thank you, my dear. Thank you so much. I would like to also introduce you to Martha Sisler. Martha is representing the Berks Encore, who has been in the year 2012 on Master's Sponsor. And you find all, if you wander around at all the senior centers in Berks County and beyond, you absolutely have got to know Martha. Thank you. Taller than Nancy.
On behalf of Berks Encore, I would like to welcome you to the 6th Annual Senior Festival of the Arts, to thank coming to support our show and our artists, and for all of you who decided to enter your works in this competition. I know that there's a list over there, a nice yellow sheet with the people who have been awarded first, second, third, fourth prizes, but there are no losers in this competition. We are so thrilled with the quality and the quantity of the pieces that were entered in this year's show. So thank you to our artists and to all of you who are here to support the arts. And art is something that you don't get too old to do. You can continue to grow and change your art throughout your lifetime, and this is just one way of showing that. Nancy said we have artists in their 50s through mid-80s, and we're just very proud that our artists represent various stages of being an adult, being a senior, and we are thrilled to have this one be the main sponsor of this year's event. Thank you.
Thank you, Martha, very much. One other thing I would like to mention to you, this is a very bright, happy day for all of us, but there is a little bit of sadness that I'd like to share with you. It's not really sadness, but I'm sure that all of you, and hopefully that you have heard about the passing of a very fine artist and gentleman, Gene Burkhardt. And he, without a doubt, was the person in Berks County who was so tremendous, so giving of himself. And Gene was a judge and has been a judge for the Senior Festival of Arts for the past 5 years. And he was, I will miss him personally because he was truly my mentor. We always didn't agree, and that was healthy, but I learned a lot from him, and it was nice to have him with us. But you know, I do want to mention that Gene will always be with us in the art community here in Berks County and beyond. And today I would like to honor Gene by having him be the honoree of the Senior Festival of Arts, and we honor him today. So thank you for being with me on that. If you knew him, you couldn't help but think the talent in this man, plus the love he gave, is so great. So we honor Gene Burkhardt today. Thank you for that. I do want to mention to you that after our Picasso presentation, we do like you to return to the art exhibit area and talk to all of your friends and enjoy the art, and of course some refreshments. Everybody comes to enjoy refreshments, I'm sure. And we have some nice ones, and we thank you for being with us. And ladies and gentlemen, Picasso alum.
Pablo, Diego, Jose Francisco de Paula, Juan Nepomuceno, Maria de los Remedios Ciprianos de la Santísima Trinidad. Mi nombre es, my name is Pablo, Diego, Jose Francisco de Paula, Juan Nepomuceno, Maria de los Remedios Ciprianos de la Santísima Trinidad. That is how I was baptized, in honor of the saints and the relatives. And if that name was not long enough for a tiny baby, Spanish law decreed that my mother's and father's, not necessarily in that order, their names be added. And so my name ended with Ruiz y Picasso. You probably know me simply as Picasso. That is how I signed my work. What a lovely tune. Can you hear me back there? Excellent. I would like not to use the microphone. What else do you know about me? Well, you certainly know what I look like. My image was everywhere during the middle years of the 20th century, our century. You probably associate my name with a style called Cubism, and that is all right. Of my 13,500 paintings and designs, quite an achievement, you must agree. Give me a museum and I will fill it. Well, I love that number. The ones that were the most famous and sold for the most money were those in the Cubistic style. Oh, you probably also heard that I was called a womanizer. I'll have more to say about that later on. But that's why you came, isn't it? To hear all the lascivious details of Picasso's life, to get all the gossip. But some biographical details to be gotten out of the way before we begin. The child with that long name was born in Malaga, Spain in 1881. My father was a naturalistic painter and an academic art professor, and the greatest influence of my early life. He taught me much, and then I rebelled. Well, not so much against him as against his style of art being the only way in which one can make an artistic statement. At 14, I moved to Barcelona, where I was enrolled in the School of Fine Arts. My father rented a private room for me so that I could work in peace. He visited daily to check up on my artistic development. We argued. At 16, I was sent to the Royal Academy in Madrid. But I did not care for classes, and so I plotted my own course of study at the magnificent Prado Museum. And by 19, I was living in the art capital of the world, Paris. Now, you may think of me as a Spanish painter, and certainly I grew up in the Spanish heritage, but it is in Paris where I truly found my voice and began telling my story. Is it a story worth listening to? I have been dead for 39 years. Yes. Well, during our time together today, have to go that way. You will see some of my oeuvre, which includes the 13,500 paintings and designs I've already mentioned, 1,228 sculptures, 2,880 ceramics, 100,000 paintings, etchings, and drawings, rugs, tapestries, poetry. If you stick around to the end, I will share with you a poem of mine, perhaps. Of course, all my work is readily available at the Art Museum and Barnes Museum in Philadelphia, at the Modern Museum and at the Art Museum, Metropolitan Museum, and the Art Museum of New York, and I see there's some out here. And occasionally, when they take me out of storage, even at the Reading Public Museum. Now, there is a museum entirely devoted to me in Paris. I will tell you how the French government wrangled that coup. And also one entirely my own in Madrid. Interestingly, even the communist countries wanted a peace of mind for me. It was said that during my lifetime, I was the most famous painter or sculptor who ever lived. Now, think Michelangelo, Leonardo, Norman Rockwell, Thomas Kincaid, and even Henri Matisse. We'll get to him. So there must be something of merit in my story. You might be wondering, perhaps, as I am, why and how I am speaking to you in English. Spanish, yes, Spanish was my native tongue. I spoke French, like a foreigner. I was never fluent in English. Let us call it artistic license of the departed. You may also be wondering about my communist connections, and whether you should be listening to one of those card-carrying Reds. Well, it is true. I joined the Communist Party in 1945, as did many of the European intelligentsia who had grown tired of ruthless dictators, class systems, and failed economies. But really, my political philosophy could be summed up as being simply anti-war. Well, not like painting Guernica. It does not really take sides, but rails against war and all of its horrors. And I have seen war firsthand in Paris and in Spain during the 2 world wars. During the Nazi occupation in 1945. Pardon me, 1 second. It's dry up here. I love the invention of the sippy cup. Bronze, I was able to keep working during the Nazi occupation of 1945 because bronze was smuggled into me by the resistance. I did not like taking sides. By the end of my life, I knew what had gone on in the Soviet Union during the Stalin years. My friend Jean Cocteau wrote this about me in his diary. Picasso says, I have joined a family, and like all families, it is full of shit. Now there's a quotation that comes across better in English. But one has to be careful about quotations. And here I'll give you one of Yogi Berra's, who said, I didn't say all those things I said. I was a collector. This is what endears me to Americans. Collector of anything about Abraham Lincoln. I have Matthew Brady photographs, copies of Lincoln's speeches, and drafts of his letters. He was, to me, the American elegance. So, if you're ready to hear my story, I shall begin. I took a trip to Paris in 1900, and I stayed. I didn't understand the language, but I soon understood the babble of the artistic language. It was the center of the universe for ideas and their expressions. And in this city, this marvelous, exciting city, I met a friend, a patron, an art dealer, a kindred spirit, a rival, and an inspiration. Everything a struggling artist needs. But first, I had to struggle. The friend, Max Sheckham, and I, we shared a garret in Lamar, top floor. We had no furniture save 2 hired chairs and a table with 3 regular legs and 1 slightly shorter. We used a brick to prop up that short leg. Oh, we also had a straw mattress filled with hay from a neighboring stable. Meals? No. Singular at best. Once in a while, crust of bread, some cheese, and onion. We also had no sheets and pillows. We used our coats when it was cold, or when it was warm. When it was cold, we kept them on, as we did with our shoes. Regarding meals, one day, Max and I found a chicken wandering in the passageway between our buildings. It was half dead, malnourished. Max wrung its neck, and we feasted for 3 days. Heat, yes, precious heat. where the stove served more as a conduit for cold air than a source of heat. I burned more canvases during that first winter than I would like to remember. I would work at all day, and then crumple up the canvas, put it into the fireplace, and light it before bedtime. But those dank, cold, hungry days steeled my resolve. They made my stomach yearn for sustenance and my soul for recognition. Those forever hours in that garret forged me into the most rapacious master chef who would create a sumptuous buffet for all of the art world and people everywhere. I must tell you a little bit more about Max Jacob and the sharing of those old days. Max was a sodomite, what you today call gay. Now, I was, and always will be, what you call straight. But there are times when people share the same room, same table, same art. Well, there are times when Max's work never received the recognition that I thought he deserved. He was a gifted artist in his own right, and I may have received, you may think, too much. We had an interesting way of sharing a ritual of sorts, the straw mattress that we slept on. I would work during the day while he slept, and he would work during the night while I slept. It made for an equitable sharing of the mattress and a way to stay out of each other's artistic way. Max was recognized in the United States, and he had two exhibitions, one in 1931 and 1938. He was a Jew who had converted to Catholicism after a kind of vision, he said. Hell, I let him have that one, without expressing my doubts about such mystical events. Despite his conversion, Max was swooped up by the Nazis in the Second World War in 1944. They were shipping him to a concentration camp when he died in a rail car en route. Those who remember Max remember him as a poet, and a very good one, I think. But the greatest gift he gave to me was to teach me his language, French, and its literature. And he also introduced me to the creative world that was Paris in the early 20th century. He took me to salons where authors, artists, and philosophers met to share and discuss ideas. The greatest of these was, or the most famous at least, was in the home of the American expatriates, Leo Stein and his sister Gertrude. Now Leo, actually Gertrude, was an artist who worked with words as her medium. She wrote poetry, plays, novels, and later a biography of me. The independent wealth that she and her brother had amassed allowed them to buy up many of the works of the burgeoning art Parisian community. She recognized in me what she thought was genius. She seemed to understand what wrote from the inside out, and soon it was my works that began lining the walls of her salon. And people came to see and discuss my work. She spoke of me as if she had always known me. She said, "He wrote painting as other children wrote their ABCs. His drawings were not of things seen, but of things expressed. In short, drawing was words for him, and it was his only way of talking. And he talked a great deal." Neither of us can recall how it came about that I would do a portrait of her. I had not done one since my young days of my formal art training, but In the winter of 1905, we had 19 sittings. One day ago, I painted up the head and told Gertrude that I could not see her anymore. I packed up and left. A year later, after studying African masks, I finished the head without a sitter. It had a mask-like quality. When told that Gertrude did not look like her portrait, I replied, "She will." After all, are we to paint what is on the face, what is inside the face, or what is behind it? For Gertrude, in 1907, I met Daniel Henry Conway. Oh, and when he saw my art, he wanted to buy all of it. Especially the painting that has become known as my best. My famous Les Damsels d'Avignon. Now, Daniel was a German, an art historian, and a collector. And he had recently opened a new gallery in Paris. He also had a businessman's acumen and recognized that the time was ripe for new art. And so, he decided to use only painters who had new ways of expressing their ideas. And I became his star attraction. People flocked to his gallery to see my work. I was able, through this, to get a proper studio and living quarters. I worked prodigiously. Everything I could create, he could sell. My star was blazing into the firmament. Unfortunately, for Daniel Henry Kahnweiler, the stars did not always line up so well. His entire inventory of art was appropriated by the Germans in World War I. Pardon me, one more second. Perhaps you are seeing through this how my work spread throughout Europe and beyond. Perhaps you were also seeing that Paris served as a network for artists. And through this network, I met George Braque. George was a French painter with a kindred spirit for exploring new ways of using the tools and media of the visual arts. Well, as Gertrude had already pointed out, I was a man of few words. But with George, I had so much to say. We journeyed together to the Pyrenees in 1911, and there we sat, side by side, painting for week after week. Those who saw the efforts of one artist said they were indistinguishable from those of the other. We began experimenting with collage and papier-collé, tearing the subject of the painting apart, turning its surface apart to see what was underneath. Well, the works that resulted were later called cubism, because the materials of the art were voids and solids in geometric shapes. We didn't use that word, but we became known as its inventors. George once said during an interview, "The things that Picasso and I said during those years will never be said again. And even if they were, no one would understand them anymore. It was like being roped to a mountainside." George enlisted in the French army when the Great War broke out in Europe. I did not. George continued painting in the cubistic style. I moved on. let's return to that painting that so fascinated Daniel Henry Kahnweiler, my Demoiselle d'Avignon. It was done in 1907 in what historians call my African-influenced period. Now, historians have to put everything in little time boxes so they can remember them. For me, it was just one continuous thread of exploration and expression. The work is of 5 nudes. Women in a brothel in Barcelona on Avignon Street. It is an abstraction, angular, aggressive. It evoked emotion. And why would it not? I paint what I think, not what I see. When this painting was unveiled in Paris, Leo Stein laughed. Braque almost choked. And Henri Matisse was horrified. Horrifié! Horrified. I took my canvas and my frustrations and I went into seclusion. You may not know about Matisse, but I will tell you. He was born in northern France and came to the Parisian Mecca to study law in the early years of the 20th century. But soon, art had captured his soul. He had an easy way of dealing with people, which I did not. Soon he was well connected with patrons and other artists like Van Gogh, Gauguin, Cezanne. And he brought me into this circle. It was his use of bold line, bright color, and repetition of pattern that inspired me. And many of really his works were inspiration for my damsel. Well, a year after being horrified, he revealed his response to my work. It was a chip or cube, if you will, off of my block. The painting, Bathers with a Turtle, used many of my techniques. The art world soon recognized a seesawing rivalry between us. While I worked in decomposition, tearing the subject apart, he worked in composition, putting things into a composite. We exchanged paintings, we met each other, we fed off one another. We sought to avail ourselves of all the aspects of the art world had to offer. He made set designs and costumes for the Ballet Russe in Paris, but so did I. And it is this ballet that forms a link between Matisse and the main focus of my story, women. Yes, I have not yet mentioned women, except for Gertrude Stein, and one may well not put her in that category. I say that there are only 2 types of women. Goddesses and doormats. It is true. And both were attracted to me, and I was to them. They came to me willingly and eagerly, and why not? I was famous, wealthy, well-connected, volatile, brooding, exciting. I married Olga Koklova in 1918. She was a ballerina with a Russian troupe. She introduced me to the formal dinner parties and niceties of high society. And I was a quick study, and soon availed myself of this exposure to wealthy collectors and beautiful women. Olga and I had a son, Paolo. He grew up to be my chauffeur. Women were always eager to be models for my work, and more. And so, when one had such a buffet of delights. Why should one, how could one settle on just one dish? There was Fernand Olivier. Oh, she made me warm and cheery, optimistic. She influenced what historians call my Rose period, with the world seen as a circus with patterned harlequins. She was the most beautiful muse. And I was intensely jealous. I would lock her up or hide her shoes when I left the apartment so that she could not leave me. There was Marcel Humbert, also known as Eva Gwen. She was a mere waif of a thing, wrapped with tuberculosis. She died in 1916, 2 years into our affair. Well, I grew older, but my mistresses stayed young. When Olga found out about my affair with the beautiful 17-year-old Marie-Therese Volter, well, she demanded a divorce. Oh, under French law, divorce meant an equal distribution of all property. I was not going to give her half of my wealth. And so, we remained legally married, but separated, for the next 37 years, until her death in 1955. Marie-Therese, who I approached outside the department store, Les Galeries Lafayette, was considered to be my primary partner during the middle years of my life. It was her features and her figure that inspired me, certainly not her mind. Well, a recurring theme during this period was the monstrous, mythological minotaur who devoured maidens. I have often thought that women were machines for suffering. Marie-Therese always thought I would marry her. I did not. She hanged herself after I died. We had a daughter, Maya. Then, during this journey, I met and vetted Dora Maar. She was a poet and photographer. Photography fascinated me. What the camera could see that the eye could not. And I was fascinated with Dora. She documented my creation of Guernica, my depiction of the darkness and brutality of war. She witnessed the artistic process that left me wrong emotionally. When it was completed, I was deeply hurt. And so I turned to poetry as an alternative outlet, and it was something I could share with Dora. But after a year, I grew tired of poetry. And thus of Dora. Well, I had met an art student, Françoise Gillot, 40 years younger than me. She told me I had to leave Dora. Well, I was 63 years old when I began my affair with Françoise. And we had 2 children, Claude and Paloma. Not bad for a man in his 7th decade, n'est-ce pas? Alas, it is here that my story has reached its climax, if you will. It is all over the hill for me. Look at my painting. This period shows that often a grotesque old dwarf doting on young lovers. It's easy to see what was creeping into my imagination, and I believe what you imagined is real. I turned to the making and painting of ceramics. And thus, I met Jacqueline Rook. I don't have to paint a picture of what happened then. Now, hold on.
Yeah.
Olga was, it may surprise you, I'm trying to speak English. It may surprise you to know that I married Jacqueline. I spent the next 12 years of my life with her. The last 12 years of my life. The climb up that hill can be a very long one, and it is amazing that once you reach the top, the road down can be such a fast and slippery descent. Now, lest you think I had gone soft in my old age and married Jacqueline because she was the love of my life. I must tell you that Francoise was trying to get her hooks into my fortune and stake a legitimate claim of Claude and Paloma as my heirs. Oh, you can love me, woman, but keep your hands off my fortune. Marrying Jacqueline was simple. It was simple revenge. Francoise didn't care so badly. She later married Jonas Salk. And the children have never wanted for anything. Jacqueline took very good care of me in the south of France, where I had vast estates. I worked prodigiously, producing hundreds of paintings and sculptures and etchings, drawings. Most who saw the work thought it the design of an impotent old man. But now, historians say that during that period, I invented Neo-Expressionism. The paintings were childlike, simple. I also created my largest piece of sculpture during that period in 1967. It was a public work for the city of Chicago, which the citizens adoringly called the Chicago Picasso. I refused the $100,000 fee they had offered me for it. I donated it back to the city of Chicago. I was not always artist. We could say that I was fertile till the end, which came in 1973 at the age of 91. I am married in Aix-en-Provence. The French government, to settle the death tax on my estate, acquired my vast inventory of work and established, yes, the Picasso Museum in Paris. Jacqueline took her own life by gunshot in 1959. The children, they still squabble over my name. You have been very gracious hosts, and I would like to give you something to take away. Don't get too excited. Of course, my visual arts are all in the hands of museums or millionaires. But a poem can belong to everyone. Now, you'll have to excuse me because once a work is out of my head, I have to use a visual reference. So, here is a poem from me to you. The morning of the world. I have a face cut from ice, a heart pierced in 1,000 places, so to remember always the same voice, the same gesture, and my laughter, heavy as a wall between you and me. The ones who are most alive seem the most still. dances. Our gaze turns to the stars. To each of you, regardless of what point you are in your own story, I say, always keep your gaze toward the stars, as I did. My mother once wrote to me, if you become a soldier, you'll be general. And if you become a monk, you'll end up pope. Well, instead, I was a painter. And I became Picasso. Happy 51st wedding anniversary to Dave and Ellen Lawrence. Thank you all.